how on earth can a government bailout in South America cause a major headache for farmers all the way over in Asia? It sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on this wild journey and show you the hidden and sometimes pretty brutal connections that make our global economy tick.
So let's just get right to the heart of it. This isn't some classroom debate or a theoretical question. It's a very real situation playing out right now. And to really get what's going on, we first have to look at the direct pressure the United States is putting on Taiwan.
So what does this pressure actually look like? Well, it's coming from two totally different but equally powerful angles. On one side, you've got the crown jewel of modern technology, and on the other, you have something as fundamental as agriculture.
Okay, so let's break this down. It's a real squeeze. On the one hand, the US is essentially saying, hey, we want half of your most valuable chip manufacturing moved to our country, or you're going to face some serious tariffs. And then, on the other hand, it's, oh, and by the way, you need to open up your markets to our farm products and sign this absolutely massive purchase agreement. It's a classic two-pronged approach.
And when I say massive, I mean it. Just look at the scale of this agricultural deal. We're talking about a commitment worth nearly 300 billion new Taiwan dollars. That's about 10 billion US dollars. This isn't just some routine trade agreement. This is a gigantic deal that essentially locks Taiwan into American supply chains for years. Right, so just as all of this is unfolding, something that seems completely unrelated is happening thousands of miles away in Argentina. Now, you might be thinking, what does that have to do with anything? Well, stick with me because this is where the story takes a really fascinating twist.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like the setup to a complicated riddle, doesn't it? What does a US bailout for Argentina have to do with farmers in Taiwan? And the clue that connects all these dots? You're not going to believe this. It apparently came from a leaked text message spotted on a US official's phone. That's the key that unlocks this whole story.
Okay, so here's the first domino. The United States steps in with a huge $20 billion aid package for Argentina. Now, on the surface, this just looks like a standard move to help stabilize a struggling economy. But this one act of foreign policy kicked off an incredible chain reaction that rippled across the entire globe. So how did this bailout set off a domino effect? Well, to figure that out, we can follow the journey of just one single commodity, soybeans, to connect Washington, Buenos Aires, Beijing, and eventually the farms in Taiwan.
Okay, check this out. The sequence is laid out perfectly here. First, the US helps Argentina. Because of that help, Argentina can now sell its soybeans to China for cheaper. So what happens? US farmers suddenly lose their biggest customer and are left with a massive surplus of crops. So who gets called on to fix this American problem? You guessed it, Taiwan, through that giant agricultural deal we just talked about.
But, you know, this global game of chess isn't just about trade balances and big numbers. It has a very real and pretty painful impact on the ground for local producers in Taiwan, especially for those in the poultry industry. Talk about being caught between a rock and a hard place. Imagine you're a chicken farmer in Taiwan. The trade deal forces you to buy more expensive American corn to feed your chickens, so your costs just went up. At the exact same time, cheap, zero-tariff chicken from the US is flooding the market, making it almost impossible to compete. Your costs are riding while the value of your product is being pushed down. It's a classic lose-lose scenario. The source material uses this really powerful saying, adding frost to snow, to describe what's happening. It just perfectly captures that feeling of getting hit with one bad thing right on top of another. It paints a pretty desperate picture for Taiwan's poultry industry. So when you connect all these dots, from the chip factories to the soybean fields to the chicken farms, a really clear picture starts to emerge about Taiwan's place in this whole complex global game. According to the source's analysis, Taiwan is basically positioned at the very end of this long geopolitical chain reaction. It's being asked to absorb the fallout from US-China trade fights and to clean up the unintended consequences of US foreign policy. In this whole scenario, it ends up propping up American farmers, which helps Argentina, which then, weirdly enough, helps China get cheaper goods, and Taiwan is left bearing the cost for pretty much everyone else. And all of this brings us right back to that big central question we started with. When you're caught in the middle of the maneuvering of global superpowers, what choices do you really have? How can a smaller economy navigate all these pressures without having to sacrifice its own people? That, right there, is the critical challenge.